Hello valued viewers, I hope you're all doing very well. I thought today we would do a cockpit familiarization on the F-15E just to complete my list of educational videos on the F-15E. We'll look at the front cockpit and the rear cockpit. The cockpits are roughly split up into left console, front instrument panel, head-up display, ABO, right console, control stick, rudder pedals, and in the rear you've pretty much got the same, with the addition of the hand controller left and right. This is a very complex aircraft and this video is going to take a long time, so please sit down and get a coffee and let's get ready. First of all, my apologies, my voice is terrible today. I'll do the best I can to get through. So let's start. Front cockpit, left console, rear. We have ground power panel. Several switches. My understanding of these is they can be on, off or auto. Each represents a different system. On means they can be powered from external ground power. Auto, powered by the aircraft itself, or off obviously. Here we have an instrument panel and this is for ground crew to diagnose problems. I'm pretty sure it doesn't do anything in DCS or anything useful to us anyway. And finally we have an override switch here that's not modelled, but it would allow us to jettison stores with the gear down. Next we have this guy here, an emergency release or opener for the air-to-air refueling door. I think this is to be used if the normal way of opening it fails. This is an explosive device which allows it to open, but no idea whether that's modelled or not in DCS. We have a switch for EWWS. This is an electronic warfare switch. I'm pretty sure it's not modelled in DCS. On to our next panel here. Let me settle there. Right, so first IFF. We can select our IFF antenna, upper, lower, or both, or automatic. No idea if that's modelled or not. No way of testing it really. When it comes to mode for IFF, an aircraft is equipped with an A and a B enciphered code, and we can choose between them there. When we are interrogated, do you want to be told that by a light showing here, or an audio recording and a light, or nothing at all? Regards the transmission of our mode for IFF, we can have low, normal, or emergency. I'm not sure if that makes any difference in the sim. Regards our UHF and VHF radios, do we want upper or lower antennas? Again, I'm not sure that's going to be modelled. Transmission on UHF radio 1 or 2. Cipher text, whether we want to receive text only in cipher or cipher and non-cipher, presumably not modelled. Crypto, this determines how our two encrypted mode for IFF codes could be deleted. In normal mode, from memory, if the aircraft is shut down, they will be zeroed, or if we eject, they will be zeroed. Zero, presumably zeros them manually, and I can hold here, which means I can shut the aircraft down and the codes will not be zeroed. If we're having radio/intercom problems or conflicts, we can adjust that here. On means that we're going to listen to the intercom, so, you know, our WIZO as well as radios. Or we could radio override, giving priority to the radio over the WIZO. Or we could have off, which will turn off the WIZO's mic from our point of view. If we want to silence tones for up to, I think, 60 seconds, we can press and hold that. And 3 castle switches here where we can change the volume of different systems. Caution, well, this knob here is going to be our 2s, so our warning systems. Launch will be missile launch and general cautions there. Our intercom there. Weapon sounds like a sidewinder tone there. Our ILS beeping there and our TACAN there. Next panel, we have exterior lights, all obvious stuff. The brightness of our formation lights, our anti-collision lights on and off, our position lights, brightness, and we have our vertical tail flood, whether bright, dim or off, and I'm not sure which regime you would use the different lights. Onto the sensor panel, terrain following radar, whether we want it operational, energized or off. Radar altimeter conditions, on means that it will be on, as well as the low altitude warning. Off means everything's off, and override means the radar altimeter is off, but low altitude warning still operates. I'm not quite sure how that works though. Radar, whether we want it off. energized but not operational, operational or emergency mode. Our nav flare system, and we've done videos obviously on all of these systems in proper detail. On, energized but not functioning, and off, and we can control the gain and level with this castle knob here. Our inertial and navigation system, whether you want it turned off, whether you want a stored heading alignment, a gyro compass alignment, or basic nav operation. Our central computer reset. If there's a problem, apparently with a central computer, you press that and reset it. No idea if that's modelled. And finally, JTIDs. This isn't operational yet, but presumably it will be to do with data link and will probably be in normal most of the time, but that will come later down the line. Move on to our throttle quadrant. Let's see what we can see here. We have down here rudder trim switch, obviously used to trim the rudder. I think we've got some finger lifts. Let's see if I can find them. Yeah, they're kind of hidden there. Finger lifts for left and right throttle. That's to do with starting the engine. Buttons here on the actual HOTAS. You can't press them with a mouse. You have to bind them in the controls menu. I'm pretty sure there were some others, but I'm not sure I'm going to see them. Let me just have a little look around. Now, there's one. Flaps control switch. Funny place to have it. Just on and off or up and down. What else have we got on the wall here? Let's get ourselves down here. Right, we've got seat up and down. Boot, boot. Nice. We've got auto fly up. Right, this is to do with terrain following radar. Again, we've got proper videos on this. This allows an automatic pull up of the aircraft on or off. NCTR, non-cooperative. Oh, I've forgotten. It's to do with the IFF, a method of active IFF, and you can have it on or off, and I've no understanding of why it would be off and why it would be defaulted to off, but always have that on as far as I'm concerned. Helps with IFF. Vmax limits the speed of the aircraft, but it's only relevant to the version of the E with the older engines. We have the more modern engines, so it has no place in this version. While we're here, we can see the fuel panel. So let's see if we can remember this. These three up here, three-way positions, wing exterior tanks, center exterior external tank, and conformal tanks. Each has a position stop transfer, so stopping transfer of fuel to or from that particular element. Normal transfer or stop refuel, which means that particular element cannot be refueled from an air-to-air refuel. We can dump fuel and stop dumping fuel. This one I've never understood, even since this module came out, but conformal tanks emergency transfer. So normal operation, normal transfer to left and right conformal tanks, or you can bias left or bias right. Now, what does that actually do? Does it stop transfer to that tank? Does it force transfer to that tank? I think it forces transfer, but I've never actually figured it out, so let me know, please. External transfer, which do you want to bias? The conformal tanks or the external wing and center tanks? And finally, for air-to-air refueling, the door that you have to open to receive, you can have it closed, you can have it open, or you can have it override. And I think override is if there's a problem and you need to emergency disconnect for some reason. Right, so let's move on. Where should we go next? Why not CAS? Well, first we have our nuclear consent here. If we are carrying nuclear weapons, we can do things with them, but it's irrelevant because we can't, so we'll ignore that. CAS panel, control augmentation system, the beating heart of the control of the F-15. We have yaw, roll and pitch. Each has three positions: on, reset, or off. Off, I'm pretty sure, doesn't do anything. Reset is for fault finding, and on is just on, so they're pretty much just going to be on. We have a built-in test here, unsure if it's functional. Terrain following couple mode. So if you have your terrain following radar on and you want to drive the autopilot from it, which of course you can do, and we've covered this before, then you can couple it there. And finally, if you want to reset the control surfaces to a takeoff configuration or takeoff trim, push that there and the light will come on to show that you have takeoff configuration. Up here, MISC control panel. We'll do the best we can here. Anti-skid, a bit like ABS in your car. Normal operation, which you're always going to have it on as far as I'm aware, gives you ABS type control. Pulsar will revert to a different type of brake pulsing. Whether that's modeled, I have no idea, or you can have it off if you want it off. You've got your landing lights and your taxi lights. Inlet ramps are these chaps in here, which precondition the air to a certain speed. They're not deployed at the moment. We can have them in auto or emergency. In auto, they will do their thing and adjust depending on your airspeed. Emergency sets them to an emergency condition, and I've never seen a reason in DCS to set them to emergency before. Roll ratio, a similar type thing. You can have the roll ratio in normal automatic operation. If there's a problem with it, you can go to emergency, but I don't understand any regime where you actually do that. So presumably just leave it in auto. Moving on to the bottom left of the main instrument panel. Let's see if I can just move that up a bit. Okay, so we have an arrestor hook, believe it or not. Most aircraft do, whether naval or not, but it's an emergency arrestor hook, and you can put that down if you need to. I'm not sure whether you can put it back up or whether it has to be reset by ground crew. Well, I guess we can find out now. Let's put it down, down, up. Oh, look at that. It does it itself. Very good. We have an emergency gear release which bypasses the normal system, which I will not press now, but I think you rotate it and push it forward. Flap indicator, green is down, yellow is in transit, and I think it disappears. The lighting when the flaps are up. Gear handle up and down, and it illuminates. Landing gear position, green here shows if they are down and locked, and then they disappear when they're up, and you will get an audio warning depending on your airspeed if it thinks your landing gear should be out, and you can silence that tone there. That can be very annoying. Next, this guy here is actually really interesting if I've got it right. I think I have. So all supersonic aircraft need pitch ratio correction. It started in the 1950s when planes started approaching and exceeding Mach 1, and that is the relationship, if I unlock here, between the forward and aft of the stick and what actually happens to the rear stabs, the amount of control I get. I want lots of control when I'm at low speeds, so I'm at 0 knots, I want lots of control here. But if I was at Mach 2, say, I don't want that much control, because if I did that much control, they would probably just snap off and I would explode, or I would pull 12G, bad things would happen. So you have an augmentation system. So there you can see I've got a ratio of 1 to 1 here. So 1 aft stick means 1 full pullback of the stab. As I go faster, that needle will get lower all the way until, well, I don't know, 0.1 or something like that. So I'll only get 0.1 actual movement of the rear stab with a full aft stick at higher speeds. So that's in auto mode, or I can do an emergency mode, which will just lock it to whatever it is, a safe amount, 0.4. So that's really interesting, and it really shows how old and antiquated the systems are on the F-15 of control. These are old augmentation systems as compared to something like an F-16, which is only slightly more modern than this aircraft here, which has full fly-by-wire. So none of this is relevant because it's all controlled by a central computer. So anyway, I found that interesting, but let me know what you think. All right, let's go down here, shall we? So this is canopy emergency release. Yes, it is. Do not press that unless you really want to. Master arm switch on or off. This is the world's most complex jettison selector. Why? Well, in reality, jettisoning stalls, pylons, stuff like that is actually quite complex. It involves pyrotechnic explosions in some cases. So there are various ways of jettisoning various stuff. You select the thing you want. You may or may not need to go into a screen and make extra corrections, and then you press the jettison to actually do the jettison. And I've done a full tutorial on it, so I don't want to go through it now fully. We've got some analog instrumentation here, which is great to see. You wouldn't see that in a very modern plane, obviously. These are backup instruments. The primaries are going to be on your head-up display and or your screens. Why would you use these? Presumably, if you had a failure of your HUD or whatnot, you would need to go to these. So we obviously have a speedo here in hundreds of knots. That'll probably be CAS, calibrated airspeed, close to but not quite the same as indicated airspeed, very different to ground and true speed. Angle of attack here, it will probably be in units instead of degrees. Why do some planes use units instead of degrees? It's something I've never really understood myself, but I believe it makes it easier for the pilot to understand in some cases. We have an ADI here, backup obviously, attitude direction indicator, which attitude is your aircraft up, down, left, right, rolling and whatnot, and we can cage it here and probably have a trimmer. Yeah, there we go, we've got a pitch trimmer. It's the first time I've looked at these. We have a VSI, vertical speed indicator, which is an interesting instrument driven by the difference in pressure above and below the wings, I believe, which tells you in essence whether you are climbing or whether you are diving. We have our barometric altimeter here telling us we are at whatever that is, 100 feet, and we can zero it. And we can see our pressure reading there in inches mercury, I think that would be. Emergency jettison, known as the Admiral's doorbell in the Navy, will jettison not all, but most of your stuff. And again, I've done a full video showing exactly how that functions. Why don't we jump up to the screens? The screens look complex. They're actually very simple in their operation. And for some reason, mine are off. Maybe I've broken something. Let me get a new plane real quick. Yes, I had indeed broken something, of course. MPDs here, multi-purpose display. MPCD, multi-purpose color display. You know, this was the kind of time in the early 80s or mid-80s when color screens were all the rage and an optional extra. They do the same thing. Obviously, this one allows color where these are monochrome. All three screens allow the same function. They can all operate the same pages, I'm pretty sure, from memory. Main menus, there are three main menus, menu 1, menu 2, menu 3. Each have a series of sub menus, some of which are modelled, some are which not, and they're all obviously covered in their own tutorials. They're operated obviously from the OSB buttons around them here, and you have additional contrast, brightness, on or off switches. And I'll show now to save time. In the rear, it's exactly the same. 2 monochrome, 2 colour, because he likes an extra screen in the back. So what do we got here? We have some fire control of the engines and accessories. Off means obviously you're not extinguishing anything. Test, we can test here. And discharge at the top here, if you push the switch up, will momentarily discharge the fire extinguishers. Where do you want the fire extinguishers to actually perform? Well, open these guys here. Left engine, right engine, and AMAD I think is kind of general accessory area. And relevant to that, overheating of the engines, burn through I think they call it, indicator. So right engine's got too hot, left engine's got too hot. And where next? Some lights here. We have master caution here. If something goes wrong with the jet or some kind of advisory, this will show and you can cancel it by pressing it. And if you're anything like me, pretty much you'll constantly have that illuminated. Next, emissions light or emissions reduction light here will show, if I remember right, this here. You push this button. Let's see if that's going to work. No, not yet because I'm not doing anything. But you can reduce your radiation emissions, obviously, so that you can be less detectable when doing certain operations. It's controlled by that there, and when active it will show an emission light there. Next we have our upfront controller with scratch pad. Just wondering how to control this about there. A lot of the basic systems of the jet are controlled from here. There are 4 main menus. Menu 1, Menu 2, Data 1, Data 2, all sorts of things. Obviously, I've gone through in detail in the various videos that we've done, and we can control various things. IFF, TACAN, low altitude warning, terrain following radar, autopilot, navigation, and various stuff. Also, down here are the radios. We've got radio 1 here, currently UHF 243, and here we have 133. With extra options shown in the bottom guard, and I can't remember what GV means now. Again, all covered in the other videos. The various options on the UFC can be entered here, so I can go in there or adjust that and go into that sub-menu there and stuff like that. As well as that, the scratch pad down here, which is alpha numeric. Numeric as default. Alpha, if we press the shift button first, will allow data entry into the UFC and or into the screens as well when you're doing different things there. Other buttons of interest, mark for mark points, autopilot to engage and disengage, autopilot, this guy's the radio, I can't remember what IP is, Grec I think is the radio, and a lot of them have multiple functions anyway. Various radio commands for left and right radio, knob here, channel selector, we've got volume, castle knob here. I think it has 4 radios in total, this aircraft, although only 3 from memory we can actually operate. Control brightness for the UFC here, which would be very useful at night time. Regards to the HUD above, we have controls for it, the brightness of it, the symbology rejection level. So normal operation with all symbology, rejection 1 with some removed, and rejection 2 with some removed. We have our HUD mode, whether we want it in day mode, automatic, or night mode. We've got a built-in test here, which I've literally just seen for the first time, and probably a light there. Video overlay onto the HUD for our nav FLIR from memory. We can control that, the overlay there. Contrast and brightness like we saw down in the nav FLIR control on the left console. Master mode, air to air, air to ground, nav or instrumentation. Put that back. That's that panel done. The HUD is the HUD. Obviously it has various modes and it has various symbologies depending on what you're doing with it. And again, I've got a full video on that, so we shan't go through that. Right, aha, some lights. Right, let's see if we can remember these. We have our 2's light there, first of all. So it's split into 2. AI will be there. Air intercept, mean we are being threatened by an air radar. And SAM by a surface radar there. We have a low altitude warning there. If we're below our preset low altitude warning, it will show there. That one doesn't do anything. This one, if our terrain following radar has failed. And I think that's our canopy is not locked warning. Screen and right, so we have an aviation chronometer here, absolutely essential piece of equipment for doing timings. We have pressure altitude of the cockpit here, so the equivalent pressure in thousands of feet up to 50,000 feet. We have our DTM here, which we don't have yet in the game, but will be added in our data transfer module, I think it stands for. You put a card in there and it will transfer the mission to the aircraft and weapon setup, maybe. We'll see. I don't know what this is called, but this is our engine analysis. So left engine, right engine, RPM in percent. We have our temperature in degrees Celsius, our fuel flow in pounds per minute, left and right engine, the percent of openness of our nozzles, currently about 80% open, and our oil pressure left and right. Probably it's going to be pounds per square inch, almost certainly. Speaking of pounds per square inch, times 1,000, 3 hydraulic systems here. They want to be in the green, obviously. Our utility system, our PCI and PC2, I think these are the main and redundant for flight controls, but I apologize if I've got that wrong. Our fuel totalizer here, a nice analog system, that's what we like, telling us how much fuel we've got, 21,000 pounds in total. And we can see a clock here in thousands, showing our internal. We can change the bingo fuel that we set in thousands, bingo bug there. We have a selector here to show what we actually want to show on this guy and this guy here. I'm not sure if I put external tanks on. Let's go and have a look. I did not. And what have I got in the feed tank? 1200 and 1500. Again, I've done a proper video on that. Down here, the jet fuel starter is used obviously when starting the engine. I've covered in the starting video, and parking brake, whether you want that on or off. And I always leave it on by accident. Our main caution panel here for the pilot, really useful panel because it's such a complex plane. Well, all planes are complex, but you always forget something. You leave something on, you've got something set wrong, and this tells you if you've either got a problem in the jet or you've just set something wrong. And so I glance at that all the time. In fact, what I do is if I get a master caution, I check down here, see what the caution is. Oh, it's just that. Yeah, that's fine. Cancel the master caution. Right, let's start moving on to right console. First, oxygen panel here. If you remember in the Hornet, I think it's called OBOGs. In the F-15, it's called MSOGs. The Americans do love their acronyms. Master switch here, whether it's off, obviously you'll want it on. So in the on position, normal operation, and PBG, PBG is a kind of, I don't know if it's modeled, but it's like a forced system where it adds extra pressure to the system, but on, you'll want it there. The dilution rate, whether you'll want it normal, so all of these systems listen to what the pilot is demanding and the altitude of the aircraft and adapt for that. If for some reason that system's not working, you might want to go to 100% pure oxygen, and you could do that there. And regards the mask demand here, again, normal operation, whether it's to be controlled by the system, by the demand, whether you want to test the mask or whether you want emergency, where you just force pressure into the mask. Flow here, just to show that I am breathing the oxygen, and here, pressure or supply, should I say, of the oxygen. And this stuff is mostly modeled, so you do have to keep an eye on it and make sure it is turned on, or you will not get very far on your mission. Regards this system, because it's a computer system, you may need to test it, so you've got a built-in test for it there. Next, ECS, here, Environmental Control System, a bit like the heater in your car. Windshield heater, whether we want that turned on or off. I'm pretty sure that's an electrical system. We have the air being blown at it to defog the canopy, whether we want that hot, normal, or cold. Pitot heat on, heat the pitot tubes, which tell us our airspeed and are essential for our aircraft to operate. If they get cold, they stop working, so you may want to turn them on. So why don't you leave them on all the time? Well, my understanding is they get very hot and they will burn the ground crew, so we can turn them off. And similar engine heat, we can heat the engine on, off, or test there, because build-up of ice is a problem with all aircraft, obviously. Engine control panel. So generators, one on each engine, left and right, whether they're on or off. We have an emergency generator here, presumably in case of failure. Never used it, and I don't understand when I'm supposed to use it, but it's there. Engine control, if turned on, we can use the afterburners on left and right engine. If not, we are restricted to military power. Engine master switches here, on and off, basically whether fuel is allowed to get to the engine and run the engine or not. External power here, whether we can accept external power into the aircraft, and off, normal, or reset. JSF starter used to start the engines and not used after that, and so I'm not sure on a hot start why it's actually turned on. I would have thought that would be off. Our air conditioning, I'm never really sure how much these are modelled in-game because there's no real way of testing, but the heating, whether you want it automatic, manual, look at that, or off, how blowy do you want the air, how much air do you want in, normal, maximum, or minimum, and I would always suggest minimum because it's a loud cockpit if you have it in normal or maximum. The air that comes into the cockpit, just like the heater on your car, whether you want it cold or hot, if in manual configuration here, and the hot air that comes into the cockpit comes from blow-off air from the engines, obviously. That's how it's heated, just like in your car. It comes off from your heater matrix on your engine. Do you want it from both engines, left engine, right engine, or off? Finally, down here, we have our interior lights. Obviously, console lights, bright or not. Instrument panel, bright or not. UFC, bright or not. What is that? Standby. Compass lights, on or off. Light test. I've just realised I should have used this before. Look, because look, it allows us to see all our lights. How silly of me. And I've just realised I've missed that one there. Whoops. I'll come back to that in a second. Right. What else have we got? Chart lights there. Warning caution panel there. Storm flood, my favourite. I always have these turned on because I have old man eyes and I need them nowadays. And display whether night or day mode for the displays. In terms of illumination, what did we miss? It was here, wasn't it? Let me press that button. It's gone out again. Well, only two are operational. That one there showed whether the laser on the T-pod was armed, and that one there showed whether autopilot was engaged. And let's see if we've missed anything. So right console, that's all that's there. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, a handle for the canopy. Devilishly complex handle here to open the canopy. ABO, we've got the ABO, E2B, magnetic compass there, always very relevant. Shoot cues here and there, telling us we are in range to shoot our missile, and a ready light there, telling us our aircraft is ready to accept air-to-air refueling. I'm pretty sure that is everything, viewers. Let's go to the rear. Oh, no, I forgot the control stick. Turn it back on. Oh, and there's a bunch of circuit breakers down here which are not modelled, and emergency brake steering handle. That, I think, actually what happens is if you've got a primary brake failure on your wheel brakes, that is what you would pull in that case. Oh, and a guy here as well. Rudder pedal adjust, which is not going to affect us here, obviously. What else have I missed? Rudder pedals down there, toe brakes, and main rudder bar. Stick here. Why can't I? There we go. And obviously I can't press the buttons here. I need to press them on my bound controls. And I think we've done everything now. Let's switch over to the rear canopy. A lot of this is just going to be repetition, but let's go through it anyway. Right, so let's start down the left console. So nothing down here. Let's go here. Something I've missed. Ejection seat arming. Ping, ping. And obviously you're going to have that in the front as well. Whoop-de-whoop. Radios. Most of these are same as what we saw before. So transmission in UHF radio 1 or 2. Receiving text in cipher, norm or only again. Mode 4 stuff, how we want to deal with retaining our mode for encrypted A and B codes, same thing. Mic, the same, but the other way round. So whether I want to prioritize radio and not the pilot, both, or turn the pilot off temporarily. Whether I want to silent, again, tones here, radio, the same 6 tone volume controls here. This is an interesting one, electronic warfare, RWR, ICS pods and ICS on its own. I'm 99% sure, at least at the time of making this video, none of these do anything. Let me know if you disagree, but I'm pretty sure that's right. We have FLIR control, forward-looking infrared targeting pod. Here and only here, we can turn it on, energize and off, and we have level and gain controls here, and I'm pretty sure we don't have that in the front seat for the TGP either, so you will need a Wizzo one way or another, or if you're in single player, you can just jump in the back here and do it yourself. Whether you want to arm your laser, you have laser arming switches in this aircraft, I believe, because the lasers in the real aircraft are very, very powerful, and they will blind people if you fire them accidentally, so that's why you have these annoying but necessary switches. Next up, hand controllers. The Wizzo will do a lot of manipulation through these screens. These screens are the same as we saw in the pilot side and can access all of the same stuff. And I think you can even have the same thing on the same screen. Let's go and try that, shall we? Air-to-air radar. Yeah, you can even just have 4 air-to-air radars. You control them through the buttons again here. Also through your hand controller here, hand controller. And here, hand controller, and I never learnt it because I haven't learnt Wizzo yet. It's on my bucket list. 1,000,001 circuit breakers that you can't press. Wow, a really jagged bit of metal to catch yourself on. Oof. Throttle quadrant, I believe it's the same because the Wizzo, and this is a great thing about this aircraft, can fly the aircraft as well. Tomcat, not so much. This, Simba can sit in the back and fly my aircraft, and that's why it's such a bloody useful thing to fly, to be honest, in what we do. Throttle quadrant, again, I'm pretty sure it's the same as we saw before. Right. A videotape recorder. I've never seen that. That's really showing its age now, isn't it? So various screens can be filmed, like a targeting pod or whatever, for training or just for security or whatever. And presumably that's where you put the tape in. Non-operational, obviously, because it's not real, but that's that. We have a power switch for the video recorder here, which we can't press. We have our nuclear button again, which is no use in DCS unless they add an M61 or whatever it is, nuke that it carries, which they won't. Gear indication here. Caution, do not lower gear above 300 knots. Yeah, that's excellent advice. Flap indicator, same as the front here. Presumably that's emergency gear. Yeah, emergency gear release, all the same. Some lovely little notes there that mean something. What else have we got on the side here? Circuit breakers don't do anything. Emergency canopy release, obviously. Hook up and down, because remember, this guy can fly the plane if the front guy's incapacitated. Screens we've already looked at. Strangely, I've never understood why, but the rear guy, although being able to fly the plane, can't change the master modes. Weird, I know, but he can see which mode he's in here. Backup instruments, all going to be the same. Pressure of cockpit, equivalent, speedo, backup ADI, VSI, barometric alti, fuel totalizer. Interesting. He's got much less control on his fuel totalizer than the front. And we're down to £20,000 as well, just from sitting here. Chronometer, I did tell you it would be a big video. What have we got down here? Can I remove that? No, I can't remove the stick in the back. That's weird, isn't it? All right, event for your nuts. Got to keep them nuts cool. We have the emergency brake here that we talked about earlier. We've got the rudder bar adjust. We've got the rudder. We've got the HOTAS. The same, I'm pretty sure, as the front. What are we missing? Right, over here. Lots of lights. And I don't know these. I know master caution is there, but these ones I don't know. So I will show up on the screen what they are now. Moving swiftly on, a big bar here, so you can hold on to stuff, which is great. Vents here, not for your nuts, for your right shoulder. Have we got a left shoulder? Oh yes we do, there. Just like in your car viewers. Right, let's go and have a look down here. We've got our UFC, and I'm 99% sure it's the same, with all the same buttons and all the same functions, so we don't need to go over that. Aha! This is new. What's this? Just had a look at the manual. Normal here means that if I eject, the front guy doesn't eject. If the front guy ejects, then we both go out. Solo means that only I eject or only the front pilot ejects. And horizontal means dual ejection, where I pull at the handle here and we both go out, and it will be me first. So that will be the standard configuration. I didn't know that. We have a handle, copiously complex, a handle for opening the canopy. The end is in sight, viewers, 1,000,001 circuit breakers. And some stuff, a light down here. Right, oxygen panel here. Same as front. Interior lighting, same as front, but presumably just applies to this rear cockpit. And what have we got down here? We've got our countermeasures here, and I've done a full video on this, but do we want to send chaff and or flare? What mode do they want to be sent out in? None at all. Energized but nothing. Manual, so we have to press the button to deploy them. Semi-automatic, so that the type and program will be chosen by the system depending on the threat, or fully auto, which you should never ever do, where the AI computer on board decides what and when to send them out. And we can jettison our flares there if we have to make an emergency landing and don't want to go up in smoke. Above that, our TEWS panel, a kind of colloquial term which covers our radar warning receiver, our jammers, our countermeasures. So whether we want our RWR powered on here, our electronic warfare powered on here. I'm not sure if that does anything. Oh, our tone regarding the electronic warfare. That guy, I'm pretty sure doesn't do anything at all. That guy, I'm pretty sure doesn't do anything at all. That guy doesn't do anything at all. And our ICS, that's going to be the internal countermeasure set, I believe. On and off indicator lights here associated with. All this stuff is moderately early access as far as I'm aware. There's lots of stuff still to be added with TEWS and its associated sub-components. Right, what have we missed, viewers? Caution, don't touch the hot thing. It doesn't have an ABO per se. I think that's it. Quite a simple cockpit in the rear. It's the first time I've actually had a proper look. Rudder bar and HOTAS. And that's it, viewers. Some things I just don't understand, but most I've got a pretty good handle on now. I hope that was useful, and bye-bye.